Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Lead Stronger Longer, the podcast where we explore how leaders can optimize performance, they increase impact, and create sustainable success without sacrificing their health, their relationships, or themselves in the process. I'm your host, Stephana Oetinger, a leadership energy expert and founder of Powerhouse Leaders. I'm also an author, and my most recent book is Stay Sane. Well, today we are going to be talking about a topic that every business owner, entrepreneur, executive, every leader cares about, and that is growth, right? But not just growth at any cost. We're exploring how to build revenue, strengthen customer relationships, create sustainable growth, and lead effectively without burning out yourself or your team. My guest today is Nicholas Loise. Did I get that right?
Stephana, you did great on that.
Oh, nice.
You knocked it out of the park. It sounded better than it should.
Oh, well, it's lovely. So Nick has been a salesperson. He's a sales leader. He's an entrepreneur. He's a marketing executive, a speaker, author, educator, President's Club winner, and chief revenue officer. Throughout his career, he has helped organizations ranging from small businesses to Fortune 100 companies improve sales performance, customer retention, profitability, and long-term business value. What I appreciate about Nick's approach is that he doesn't just talk about sales. He focuses on creating systems, the processes, the strategies that help businesses acquire customers, serve them well, and build relationships that last. Nick, welcome to Lead Stronger Longer.
Stephana, thank you for having me, first off, and thank you for doing this podcast. I mean, I love the medium of podcasts. We're on them a lot. And I also know that it's a labor of love, right? It's a lot of work to do it. So I appreciate you as the host. I appreciate all the power that you put into this and all the energy you put into this, no pun intended, but really focusing on, helping your audience, the people that you love to serve and the people that you want to provide good information from. So thank you for that.
It is my pleasure. And Nick, since you have spent your career helping companies grow and scale revenue, when you hear the phrase lead stronger longer, what does that mean to you personally?
That's a great question. So lead stronger longer means, doing what it takes to be a very good leader, probably more of a servant leader, and realizing that you have to be filling the cups of your employees, of your staff, of your support staff 24/7. I spend a lot of time in the world of salespeople. Salespeople are a different breed, if you will. Sometimes they're the elite athlete of the business world, right? So they are always out there performing, but you have to fill their cups a lot, right? And sometimes they don't take the time to do that. So we have to, as a leader, sometimes that's a carrot and a stick, right? Sometimes that's you become, you just have to manage each person differently or lead each person differently. It's not a one size fits all.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I've never heard that before, that they're the elite athletes of the business world, but that is so true and so spot on. So have you ever experienced a season where you were successful on paper? And you can even tell if it's not your personal story. I'm curious if it's a salesperson that they were successful on paper, but then they realized that the pace wasn't sustainable.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've felt that myself, and I find that with salespeople all the time, right? That you're successful on paper, you're doing everything right. Maybe you're making President's Club, maybe you're hitting quota over and over and over again, and you're getting all that accolades. But there was something misaligned. Maybe it was that they were running on empty. Maybe they had stuff. I myself had stuff going on in my personal life, but still was performing at work. But we're human, right? We're multidimensional, and we always have stuff going on. Sometimes salespeople, the world that I live in, Maybe sometimes they make bad choices and how they cope with them, right? And so you have to always be on the lookout for that as a leader, as the business owner, as a leader managing the sales teams, and realizing that the constant barrage of do more, do more, do more, just doesn't work, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to, that's why, that's why sales has got the highest turnover. One is, because of that internal pressure and that external pressure. Two is there's no coasting, right? Every month is a new month, right? I like to say it's like an etch a sketch. Our quotas get shaken and now they're empty. And now we have to draw the picture again through the etch a sketch. So it's a dynamic environment that we live in with dealing with salespeople.
That's a great visual. So in these high pressure sales environments, what separates leaders who can stay grounded? They can stay effective. They make better choices. They're effective, not just from those who eventually, so if we juxtapose to those that are making poor choices, right? What separates those leaders?
So I think what separates leader. This is something I'm stealing from Mike Weinberg, who is a prolific author and a phenomenal sales coach. He says you got to manage the heart and the head, right? And I think you as a leader have to do both of that, and you have to manage the heart and the head. And if you notice that the salesperson is struggling, one is you have to offer them the resources if you're part of a company that has resources for that person. But if not, you have to kind of step in, take them off, if you can, offline, or if you're in an office, what's going on? Talk to me a little bit about what's going on. We
So
try to
what are
get.
those warning signals?
What are the warning signals you
Yeah,
see?
that make you
Yeah, yeah,
say, hey,
yeah.
what's going on?
Well, one is they may be underperforming, right?
Okay.
Two
Yep.
is that they may be having some little of erratic behavior. Three is they may be flying off the handle on little things. Salespeople are normally hardwired or high strung, but it's just even more intense. Well, three is if they're always gregarious, maybe they're pulling back a little bit. Maybe they're quiet. Um, Maybe if you've always seen that their appearance has always been immaculate, now it starts to be a little sloppy or a little bit misshaven. So there's all those little things that you have to look for. I'm not saying that on Friday they choose not to wear a hoodie, right? And then that doesn't mean that they're off the rails. But if you're noticing that they're historically bad, or just how are they interacting with clients? So if you're sitting on client meetings with them and they're not at their best game, and historically they've always been at their best game, that's something too that you have to kind of jump in there. Two is if you have a team, right? Sometimes the team members are astute to each other and they may raise the flag for you. And they may say, hey, listen, something's going on with Nick. I don't know what it is, but I think something is going on.
I love that. And so as a leader, you'd want to cultivate that kind of communication, that it's
I think you
safe to
have
come
to.
into
Yeah, I
and
think
talk
it
about
takes
it.
a
Yeah.
village today,
Yeah.
and you have to, one, make it safe, right?
Hmm.
Make it safe for the person that's bringing it forward, but also make it safe for the person that is dealing with this, right?
Yeah.
That is having to cope with something.
Yeah, for sure. That's very useful. I'm curious as to what you would do personally. Do you do something that helps you stay centered, especially when expectations or your goals or your pressures continue to just keep rising?
Yeah, so I feel that all day, right? Because we manage a lot of different clients and a lot of different clients' expectations, and some days it's a lot of pressure. So you don't want to see me on a day that I don't go to the gym. You do not want to see me do that. So that's the first thing I do every morning. And then the other thing I try to do, and I read scripture, right? I read. I'm Catholic, and so I read the Bible every morning. And then there's a couple different, let's call it newsletters, for lack of a better phrase, e-newsletters that kind of help me focus and center myself. And so I read those every morning, right? If I don't, I kind of feel it, right? I kind of feel it. And so those are the first 3 to 4 things. Three is I try to have a healthier exit from work every day. I used to not. I'll be checking my phone. So now I'm trying to have a much healthier aspect of that. My wife probably would challenge me on that some days. And then realizing that we're humans, right? We have to turn off from work on certain days. And, I'm trying to be better about that also.
Yeah, very, very useful. So I love this. Number one for you is the gym, which is essentially movement. So for a lot of my clients, it's sleep, it's hydration, it's some of the food they're eating. But I love that you started with the gym, going in, getting physical movement. But the second one you said is your faith, which I love. And I think that that's so important, because having something that is bigger than you, even, right, to put that time in and to connect with that, that's tremendous. And then you said at the end of the day, and those transitions from work, where you just like digital shutdown, or you're shutting down the desk, and it's okay, you can unplug from that. So really wise, very helpful. Awesome. So
I on that last point, because I think it's really more important today than it was maybe 10 years ago. We're in a work from home environment, right? And so it's much more difficult, I think, because we used to have the commute. I had a commute, right? And so you could kind of decompress on that commute home, unless it was like when I worked in the Sydney, you had to take public transportation. So you didn't really have all that commute. But in the car, you could kind of create that environment, have the music on that you like, or whatever it is. Now, when so many of us, and historically sales have always been deployed to work from home, right? I started out very young and was in a home office. And so you kind of have to create that work environment office, as you can see where I'm at, but also have that decompression time of understanding what that is. And I found myself, I have to go outside, right? Nature is wonderful. I'm in Chicago as we're recording this. And so, we really only get 6 good days. Today is one of them, right? So we want to enjoy that really good day. I know you're in Texas, so you always see the sun, but so I think you have to do things in the day, and then at the end of the day, almost ritualistic, to decompress and to kind of pull yourself away.
Absolutely. I love that. And knowing yourself enough to know what works for you, because some it would be, I got to get a workout to let go of all the steam. So
Yeah.
I love that. Really useful.
And I tell you this much, 30-year-old Nick did not know that. Right.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think that that's important. That's why I love talking with folks that have the experience and can share this, because this is at 30, that was the last thing I would have thought about, that's the most important. These basic foundations that are vital to our well-being and to our success. That's why we burn out, and we can fix that. So, and coming up with this question here, you've worked with organizations ranging from startups all the way to Fortune 100 companies. So what leadership habit consistently creates success, regardless of the company size?
I was fortunate when I was very young to work in large corporations where they did a lot of leadership training, right? So I think we've talked a little bit about it, that situational leadership, right? I think that is consistent. You can't treat everybody the same, and everybody's at different planes. And so you have to be you have to be the leader that they need at that moment. And that moment is shifting. So that may change. So you have to realize that. I was with a corporation that did a lot of Covey training, Stephen Covey, for your listeners. And I still think that is, it's foundational, and I think it's really good. And I still kind of fall back onto that a little bit, and I think it's the mechanism that you have to realize that they're human first. Sometimes business owners want to kind of make them cogs in their wheel, if they will, but they're humans first, and they're bringing a lot of baggage, they're bringing a lot of emotion, and they're bringing a lot of history to the table. So you kind of have to understand that.
So what would you say is one habit that a leader should start doing immediately?
Seek first to understand.
Awesome. And so on the other side of that, what's one habit that they absolutely should stop doing immediately?
Stopping walking up to them with their agenda and just start into that agenda.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you. So we know most companies focus heavily on acquiring new customers, right? They're always after the next. And you have spent much of your career emphasizing lifetime customer value.
Sure.
So how does that shift the way leaders think about growth, relationships, long-term success?
It's a difficult concept, right? Because I had the benefit of working for a great mentor who's a great educator today, a gentleman by the name of Dan Kennedy. And he said, we will make a sale to get a customer, not get a customer to make a sale, right? And so what you have to do is you realize that at some instances, if you have a really good programmatic experience and full life cycle, and the lifetime value is quite large, you could almost go negative to acquire that customer, right? And so it's a lot of times we always think that the CAC in our world, cost of acquisition, cost of lead, everything has to be positive. And it's great if you could have an ROI positive. But the really astute entrepreneurs, business owners, businesses, that type of thing, they realize those that could spend the most to acquire a customer will win, right? And it's really programmatic in there. It's different thinking. Because a lot of times we'll just say, well, here's our budget. It's going to cost us $300 to acquire a customer, but there might be some really great customers that will cost you $1,000 to get, right? And so you be worth it in spending that. So I think that's as a marketer, I kind of came up in sales, and I kind of flipped over to marketing and now do both. I think you have to kind of understand that and just take a look at what's that lifetime value, and really knowing that it's not the front end cost, right? It's the second money's. I always say second money's easier than first money. So it's that lifetime value of constantly selling to that client.
Yeah, I love that. And the perspective as you were describing that makes me think of also cultivating the relationship. I suppose I call it
Sure.
nurturing, right?
Yeah.
But it's when you do it from that heart-head connection, like you said
Mhm.
before, then there's a genuine relationship being built as opposed to the transactional situation. So great words. I had never heard that about Dan Kennedy. That just definitely made me perk up a little bit. I'm not I don't know Dan Kennedy and his work that much, but I can tell you what you just said with regards to his quote. I love that. That is very useful. So if a leader were listening today and they wanted to create success that lasts, not just this quarter, not just this season, but over, let's say, the next decade, what would you encourage them to focus on first?
Well, I think we just talked about it, right? Having that really, really well orchestrated, and orchestrated is the key word in that lifetime value and customer journey, right? And it's not just the front end, because a lot of times we forget about that because it's all about new business, and that's sexy. If I could, we think about it, but it's really, retention is the new growth. And so, how do I reduce my churn if you have a churn environment, or how do I make sure that I keep my customer, but also what does it look like, and how can I sell them more goods and services or extend the goods and services that they bought, so I really have a long-term lifetime customer value. I think that's extremely important. The second thing is really creating processes and systems not only to acquire the company, to acquire the customer, but also to do that. And a lot of times we leave that to chance. So it's really those that think through that entire customer journey. And sometimes, I gotta point the finger back at me. I didn't always think that through, but really kind of think through that customer journey.
So where should they actually invest specifically their time, their energy? Is it in the system first, building that system? Is it a front end type of thing? And then what does that actually look like for the greatest long-term return and impact?
Well, they're probably got something going on, right? If they're in business, they've got something. They're acquiring customers. So I think they want to take a look at where's the constraint, right? I'm a big theory of constraint guy, TOC, right? So where is the constraint? Is it in my acquisition? Is it that I'm losing people at 13 months? So what's going on at 12 months or 13 months that's causing that? So I think the data will show them what they should do, and then they should try to figure it out, right? You don't lose the customer at 13 months, or probably at something's happening at 11 or 12 months that you need to now think about. Now, how can I extend that out to keeping them to 18 months or 24 months? So I think the data will show them, since they have a system, and then they could probably modify and improve a system.
Okay, so that's probably something we could dive a little deeper in, but I want to go back to the leading of that salesperson when their performance burns out. So for example, at Lead Stronger Longer, we talk about staying sane. Okay. So my book that just came out, it's
Love it.
it's maintaining self-authority in these high pressure environments. And I'm curious as to what mindset or a discipline or daily practice that helps you stay focused, that helps you stay clear and effective when things become chaotic.
You know, I think the younger generations are probably better at it than my generation. In full transparency, I think they've learned when to ask for help. Right, I see a lot of that with them. There's no stigma with therapy. There's no stigma for reaching out for help. There's no the work life balance. They're easy. They're better at putting a flag in and saying, this is my private time. This is what I'm doing. That wasn't instilled in us when I was coming up right through the corporate ranks, right? We kind of worked all the time and still do for some things. So I want to give credit because a lot of times the younger generation gets, we rail against them, if you will, but I think they do have some great things that I see. So I see that with a lot of young sellers that they've kind of figured that out. So for myself to make sure that I maintain saneness, I think it's kind of having that process or system, not only for the work, but also for the decompression as well as the life outside of that. And I think what gets us is that constant, if you will, attack on all fronts. So you almost have to say, okay, what's the most important thing now? And time block is very, very important. So, okay, I'm working on this. No, sir, things happen, emergencies happen. We've got to take care of the problem, but really focusing on that. And I think we are far too distracted, and we allow that distraction to creep up in us. And I think that causes a level of anxiety. I think this is probably one of the worst inventions in the world. I know people think it's the best invention in the world. I'm not sold on it. And I also think that we allow the Slack to be chat and the quick, the text, and there's just so many methodologies of communicating with us. If I think about when I started up, I actually, when you had to make phone calls, you had to find a phone bank and you had to have quarters, right? Or you had a card and you dialed, from that, and you didn't have the immediateness of sending an email. You had to send a letter, right? So maybe you thought more creatively about what you wanted to say. And so I think that's an issue that allows us to really get overwhelmed and feel the lack of sanity, is because it's just constantly barraging us.
Yeah, this is literally no time to process.
Correct.
Like there's no right.
Yeah.
You're building a process, but there's no time to process, and so
Right.
I'm with you 100% on that. Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma. Let's do a little lightning round if you don't
Oh, I
mind.
love lightning rounds. All
Awesome.
right. These
Okay,
are
cool.
fun.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest mistake most businesses make when it comes to sales?
They don't realize that they have to make the investment in sales, and they won't give the sales process and system enough time to be successful.
Good. What's one sales myth you wish would disappear forever?
I wish we could get rid of the bro culture that is in sales floors.
Get rid of the bro culture. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Yes, please. All right. What's one thing that every entrepreneur should know about customer retention?
Treat the golden rule, just treat them well. I also think that you, as the business owner, need to either be reaching out to your high value net worth clients, or have somebody on your team be doing that. So people, usually there's the 80-20, the Pareto rule. So there's a finite amount of customers that are really delivering the most around your revenue. So you need to understand those.
Yeah, good. So what's one book that's influenced you around your leadership journey?
Around my leadership journey, if I go back, I think Stephen Covey, who I mentioned earlier, I think Peter Drucker, I think those two have helped me. Certainly older books. If you want something a little bit newer of a writer from a leadership perspective, he wrote The 5 Dysfunctional Teams. His name is escaping me. I think it starts with a D, but he's got like a series of books. 5 Dysfunctional Teams, The 6 Traits of a Leader, What the CEO Should Do. I think it's It starts with a D. I apologize. I don't
Okay,
remember.
cool. No, we'll check it
Yeah.
out. And then it's the 7 Habits you would say is the
7
number
Habits
one.
of, yeah, it's not highly successful. I think he's got a leadership book too, that's pretty
Okay,
good. I think his son maybe wrote that, but it's Principle Centered Leadership is really good.
awesome. So what's one habit that contributes most to your success today?
I think I get to talk to really cool people like you, and I learn, and I get to have a lot of fun. And I think I'm a bumblebee. I learn from a lot of different things, and I pollinate the
Mm,
flowers in the fields, and that by just being in a lot of different industries and talking to a lot of really cool, smart people.
nice. I like that. So I'm going to ask you this one because I want to know what you think is the personal cost of growth, especially in the sales, but that no one's talking about in sales. The cost,
So I think
personal cost, right?
personal cost.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about that. I think if there's a behind me, there's a book that's called The Force, and it's about the Xerox sales team. I think it was in the 80s and 90s, one of the highest performing sales teams. But the dysfunction that they all had and how they were just, almost broken people aside from the selling. And I think that, that personal cost, that personal that we've put on salespeople. Maybe they're in the wrong role, right? So they just don't
Mm,
feel comfortable doing that. Maybe to make their numbers, they're stretching their personal ethics, right? So there's that cost to that. So there's a lot of dynamics, right? And I think we don't think about that and we don't realize that. But I think we have to. So there's the personal cost, there's the ethic cost, there's the physical cost, there's the mental cost, there's all of that. I don't know if that was your question.
no, that's workable for sure. And then
Okay.
I just look at, because I talk to a lot of people who are entrepreneurs and they're not necessarily salespeople. And you look at the E-Myth and there's the different, the
Sure.
technician,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they have
yeah,
to
yeah.
wear all these hats. And the bottom line is, should they just go get a salesperson or get someone to do sales for them if they can't wear that hat?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have to convince them. But I think they have to set up the systems and the process first,
Mm.
right? Because the
Yeah, and they
when
probably
you
can nowadays. I mean, you
yeah,
probably have something that someone could set up and
yeah,
and
it's just
and handle.
easy.
Yeah.
But so what
Yeah.
what you do, and here's where that fails, is well, we hired a salesperson. Well, one is we didn't have the systems and process set up. We didn't have the technology that they need. We
Yeah.
didn't give them a clean list. We didn't have a playbook created for them that they could learn and modify and make it their own, right? So we didn't set them up for success. So it's
Mhm.
almost like a football team just saying, go out there and play, and
Yeah.
you're never going to get to the Super Bowl that way, right? We have mandatory training camps. We have diet, we have strength coach, we watch films, we have playbooks that we go over and over and over and over again. We run the simple plays first, then we get the more exotic plays in, right? And you can't just expect to throw somebody into an organization that's going 60 miles an hour and for them to catch up on the first day. And
Mhm.
so that's the biggest problem that I see. And it's probably 10 times worse with entrepreneurial or small business run organizations than larger organizations,
Mhm.
because there's a little bit of chaos and dysfunction that most sales small organizations have because the owner creates that, and I'm pointing a finger at me as well as everybody else. But so you kind of have to get out of the way and create the process and system to make the person successful.
Yeah, as a priority for sure. Yeah, very good. So, Nick, thank you so much for coming here and joining us
Sure.
today and for sharing
Yeah.
your insights, your experience, definitely your wisdom. So, one of the themes I've heard throughout our conversation is that sustainable growth it's not about pushing harder. It's not about forcing harder. It's about the processes. It's about building those processes and the right processes for the right people. That's going to help. And then creating those long-term customer relationships and looking at that from the lens of the ROI is not. It's making a sale to get a customer, not the opposite, not the other way around. I love that. Well, that is exactly what Lead Stronger Longer is all about. It's definitely about leading with intention over the long haul. And so for everyone listening, if today's conversation resonated with you, be sure to connect with Nicholas Loise and learn more about his work. I'll make sure it's all in the show notes. But Nick, if you want to go ahead and share right now how folks can get a hold of you.
Sure. They could hit us up on LinkedIn, Nicholas Loise or Nick Loise. They could check out salesperformanceteam.com. They could check out our other company, which is Your Sales Recruiter, if they need help with recruitment. And they could also email me at nick@salesperformanceteam.com.
Awesome. Well, success is not just about how high you climb. It's about having the energy, the clarity, the health, the relationships, your sanity, and the purpose to enjoy the journey once you get there. Until next time, stay strong, stay grounded, and stay sane. Keep leading stronger, longer.